The South Florida Amateur Astronomy Association, in association with the NASA Night Sky Network, presents Figures in the Sky: How Cultures Across the World Have Seen Their Myths and Legends in the Stars. What is a constellation? A constellation is a group of stars that together form specific patterns. They are easily recognizable in the night sky, and there are 88 official constellations. The stars that form the constellation may not necessarily be next to each other, as they are distributed in vast space in 3 dimensions. Some of the most known constellations are Orion, Taurus, and Canis Major. The constellations we see change throughout the year based on seasons. Constellations you see also change based on which hemisphere you live in. The visualization here shows how Betelgeuse has been used by 17 cultures out of the 28 to form constellations, each represented by a different color. The main shape of a long rectangle that is tightened by a belt in the center is clearly visible, with many lines of different constellations appearing side by side. These bright stars thus seem to form a distinctive figure. However, there are some fascinating alternatives in there too, mostly humanoid shapes by the Egyptians, Navajo, and Tupi. Orion is very useful as an aid to locating other stars. By extending the line of the belt southeastward, Sirius can be found. To the northwest, Aldebaran. A line eastward across the 2 shoulders is Procyon. And if you make a line from Rigel through Betelgeuse, you can find Pollux and Castor. Alnilam, Mintaka, and Alnitak, which form Orion's belt, are the most prominent stars in the Orion constellation. Betelgeuse is the second brightest star in Orion. It establishes the right soldier of the hunter. Bellatrix serves as Orion's left shoulder. The constellation of the hunter has also proven to be a fertile hunting ground for extrasolar planets or exoplanets, planets beyond the solar system. In one myth, Orion fell in love with the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, daughters of Atlas and Pleione. He started pursuing them, and Zeus scooped them up and placed them in the sky. The Pleiades are represented by the famous star cluster of the same name, located in the constellation Taurus. Orion can still be seen chasing the sisters across the sky at night. In Hungarian mythology, Orion is identified with Nimrod, a famous hunter and father of Hunor and Magor, the 2 twins also known as Hunad Hungarian. In Scandinavian tradition, the constellation is associated with the goddess Freya and called Frigg's Distaff, or Friggarok, after the tool she used for spinning. The Chinese knew the constellation as Shen, a great hunter or warrior. Now we move on to Canis Major. However, if we instead focus on Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, no clear shape is shared across cultures. In Western culture, it belongs to Canis Major, the large dog, and a dog's shape can indeed be recognized. But other cultures have seen Sirius as part of an eagle, wolf, and several more animals. Canis Major is home to many variable stars. It represents the larger of Orion's 2 hunting dogs who accompany him as he hunts Lepus the rabbit. It is an ancient constellation with many different meanings to many different cultures. The ancient Babylonians saw it as an arrow aiming towards Orion. Part of the stars from Puppis form the bow. To the Chinese, the stars in Canis Major were part of Vermilion the bird. In Greek mythology, the constellation represented the dog Laelaps, a gift from Zeus to Europa. The dog was famous for being the fastest in the world. Zeus eventually placed the dog into the night sky. If you connect the stars with lines, this constellation does somewhat resemble a dog. And finally, in Egypt, Sirius marked the flooding of the Nile. The stars heliacal rising just before the annual flooding and the summer solstice played a crucial role in the Egyptian calendar during the Middle Kingdom era. Perhaps the most universally recognized figure across all cultures is the first one that many people learn as a kid, the Little Dipper. Roughly 17 out of the 20 constellations that use Dubhe, the top right star, share practically the same cooking pan shape. And even though the shapes are almost the same, the actual figures that we're seeing differ quite a lot. from an elk, a caribou, to carts, and even a group of organized thieves by the Macedonians. Ursa Minor constellation lies in the northern sky. The constellation's name means the smaller bear or the lesser bear in Latin, and is known in the US as the Little Dipper. Ursa Minor was first cataloged by the Greek astronomer Ptolemy in the 2nd century. It is easy to recognize because it contains the famous Little Dipper asterism. Ursa Minor is also notable for marking the location of the North Celestial Pole, as it is home to Polaris, the North Star, which is located at the end of the Dipper's handle. Ursa Minor is usually associated with two different myths. In one, the constellation represents Ida, the nymph who took care of Zeus on the island of Crete when he was small. In the Babylonian star catalogs, Ursa Minor was known as the Wagon of Heaven or Momar Gid Da'ana, also associated with the goddess Damkina. In ancient China, the polar region of the sky took on immense symbolism because of its literally pivotal positioning mirroring the central authority of the emperor on Earth. The area including the modern Ursa Minor plus parts of Camelopardalis, Draco, Cepheus, and Cassiopeia was known to the Chinese as Ziwei, the Purple Palace enclosure, or Central Palace. Surrounding it was a wall delineated by 15 stars divided into western and eastern sections. Although Chinese astronomers did not recognize the Little Dipper we know today, they did have a similar dipper shape called the Goshen, or the curved array. The Arabs called the 7 stars of the Little Bear Banat Nash al-Sagura, the Little Daughters of Beer, or Coffin. Let's look at all 2,168 unique stars that are included in at least one constellation across all sky cultures. The chart here shows the stars according to their brightness from left to right, and the number of constellations the star appears in from top to bottom. The general trend is visible. The brighter the star, the more constellations it's included in. This makes sense since brighter stars just stand out more. Another thing that most likely plays a role is a good placement around the ecliptic, so it's visible in many regions of the Earth. However, some stars stand out because they rise from the general masses. They are included in constellations more often than you'd expect based on their brightness. The main reason appears to be that they are often part of an easy-to-recognize shape of stars such as Orion's Belt, the Pleiades, and the Corona Borealis and Taurus constellations. And vice versa, several other stars are used less often than expected for their brightness. In these cases, the star is often a bit of a loner. There is no group of close-by stars to form an easy-to-recognize shape with, such as Sirius and Canopus all the way on the right. Now, you may have thought that constellations were only created with stars. However, there are such things called dark cloud constellations. Dark cloud constellations are from the Great Rift, a series of dark patches in the Milky Way that is more visible and striking in the southern hemisphere than in the northern. It vividly stands out when conditions are otherwise so dark that the Milky Way's central region casts shadows on the ground. Some cultures have discerned shapes in these patches and have given name to these dark cloud constellations. Members of the Incan civilization identified various dark areas of dark nebula in the Milky Way as animals and associated their appearance with seasonal rains. Australian Aboriginal astronomy also describes dark cloud constellations, the most famous being the emu in the sky, whose head is formed by the coal sack, a dark nebula, instead of the stars. It is innately human to see and use the figures in the night sky, to dream, to tell stories, to navigate, and more. Some groups of relatively bright stars are so distinct that cultures from around the world, separated by vast oceans, have connected them into a constellation in almost the same way. It's our human imagination and cultural history that ascribes wildly different figures and meanings to the shapes, though, from kings to legendary and important animals to mythical gods and beings. So the next time you're outside during a dark but nice warm summer night, lie down in a patch of fluffy grass, look up, and imagine your own shapes and figures from the pinpricks of twinkling lights above. You'll probably end up recognizing more shapes than you would have thought.